Hi, everyone. Welcome to today's episode of the Mastering Retention Podcast. I'm Tom Hammond, co-founder of UserWise and your host today. Today, we have a very special treat. We have Miss Bakyt Aidaralieva. Hopefully I got that right.
Perfect.
But we get to talk about a topic that's near and dear to my heart, which is tooling and operations and stuff. And, it's one of those things that I think a lot of people almost kind of neglect and don't really think about the fact of like, hey, I've just got to like build this game. And then finally you get through this process of building the game and then you go live and you realize I don't have anything to actually operate this game or run this game. And then it's just like a sprint to try to get there and stuff. So should be super fun. Before we dive into things, Bakyt, though, I always like to ask, what's your journey? Like, how'd you get into games and where you are today?
Yes, absolutely. I completely agree with you. And I've had the same experiences with, working in games, of launching games and also lacking some tools and things like that. So I've had quite a bit of journey, and I got into gaming, to the mobile gaming industry quite by a chance or maybe even accidentally. So my background is completely different, or my education. I studied political science in the US in Colorado, in CU Boulder. So I had this aspirations to work with people in governments and kind of have this kind of change for society, people, maybe continue with law. But then it happened so that I moved to Finland because of family reasons, and it was a completely different setting for me, an environment and country and language. So I had to restart kind of thinking of what I'm gonna do for work. And as you know, Finland is very well known for games, and it has grown. There has been, few very well known companies then, and still startups then. And yeah, I applied to one of them, and that was Supercell, and I got the job working as a customer support specialist, working with English speaking players and Russian speaking players. So that's how my journey started. And I can say that it was a very successful start, considering, working with Supercell games, Heyday, working with Heyday and Clash of Clans, a little bit of Boom Beach when it just soft launched. And so from then on, I went into EA, worked with SimCity Build It, leading the customer support teams there, remote teams in Ireland and in India. So as you know, also it's also quite a nice game and quite a successful one as well. And working at EA was another great journey for me after Supercell. And from there on, I wanted to, go into. I realized that I only worked with successful projects, successful games, and everything was really great. And I wanted to try something new. So I went to this newly, open startup at the time. It was called Armada Interactive. It doesn't exist anymore, but it was a, in a way, successful startup, very promising. But after, I think, about 7 or 8 months, the game didn't perform as planned, and I didn't reach all the goals. So it was calling quits, and I ended up going to another startup from there on. But during that being in a startup process, I built out customer support tools and admin tools, and the whole processes and the whole functions for support and community, and even work with like marketing campaigns, because as you know, working in a small startup, you get to do many things, or even have to do many things. So I wanted to use all of my experience that I already had from different companies, like big companies like Supercell and EA. And yeah, I went on to Play Raven, also another great project that was going on at the time, working with EVE Online project, making a mobile version with the Iceland and CCP, and it was quite a great journey as well. Going to Iceland, going to the Fan Fest, and seeing all these passionate players who've been playing the game for so long, and really like this community getting together, playing it for so long. It was really something for me to see players live, passionate, while most of the time, as a support person or game dev person, you are working from the office and communicating with players, distantly, remotely. But for example, with FanFest, seeing those players was quite an experience. So yeah, and after that, another turn happened. Quite the same year that I ended up at Rovio, since PlayRaven then got acquired by Rovio. So since then I've been at Rovio working on a game project with them, which unfortunately last year was discontinued and killed, as it's said in the games industry now.
Yeah.
And yeah, it has led to many different learnings, but I can proudly also say that what I have built with my team, the tools that we've built, that actually didn't get killed, and it stayed and survived to serve the other Rovio games currently still live, being used by our central technology department there. So yeah, customer support has been I think quite a passion, I would say. I really enjoyed working with players. So I really try to bring as much value to my work and working and communicating with players, also to the game team. I saw it as a big kind of a mediator or a big connector in between. I saw myself as a connector between the players and the developers, and bringing that player experience and communicating it to developers and vice versa. So I thought it was a very important role to be in, and building the right tools, from both perspectives. That has been my latest endeavor that I have been doing at Rovio. So yeah, so I hope it gives a nice picture on how I got into games and my whole journey in the gaming industry.
I actually think that's an amazing story. And I love how you kind of have this player-centric view that you can then apply to the things that you're building and the things that you're doing, because you can always like really empathize with the player and understand what their actual experience is, to kind of draw like, ultimately everything that we're doing is trying to make a better player experience, right?
Yes.
So I love that. Cool. So let's do a little like hypothetical scenario. Let's say you and I decide to start a studio today. I think, everyone can agree that, we need a game engine to build a game. So we're probably going to pick either Unity or Unreal. Maybe something else, probably one of those two. Let's assume that we've built our game, things are great, and we want to actually look into like really launching and operating this game. Can you maybe like give me a list of like what tools and platforms do I actually need to run this live game kind of as a service, especially for folks that are maybe, coming from more traditional PC or console AAA or something like that? Like, what are the things they actually need to run this game?
Yeah, so of course there are a lot of things to consider, but into plans. But of course, the main things is to set up channels for players to be able to reach out to game developers, to the game makers, because that's the main thing that's the main relationship that needs to be built out. Because if they don't have that, in my experience, they try to reach out from all the other avenues. Like they will send an email, they'll find a phone number from, searching online. So setting up the CRM tools for communication, I think, is really key. And also in the beginning of the game building and launching, it's really important to know what is going on in the game and how the players are reacting. So getting all the feedback and all the bug reports and all the technical issues that are happening initially. Quite often players are very invested and are very good at communicating and reporting those issues. So I think from the get-go to try to build out the integrate the CRM tools, like for example HelpShift and Zendesk, is very important. And another thing important that helps with supporting customers is the administrative tools or the server backend tools, where you can look up all the player account information, different platform and device information for technical issues, to solve, to troubleshoot any issues that may occur. Because, working with mobile games and deploying different versions of games, those are quite inevitable. They happen, and you need to fix them. You need to communicate what happened, how it happened, especially when we're talking about players who are, who've invested their time and money. So that's where it would start. But then as well as you go scaling up the game, there are of course many other tools that are needed, like moderation tools for, either it's in-game chat, then there's the live operation tools that you need to make deployments, analytics tools that either it's in-house or, kind of bought-in tools that are for different needs, for community and support and marketing, quality assurance. Then there's localization and all these different parts in the game making.
Cool, that's great. Quite a list. So let's maybe we'll kind of go through some of these, go into a little bit more detail. I've got some questions about what they're useful for, but one of the things that I want to kind of talk about, some of these is what are the essential features and what are the nice to have to maybe, help people that are trying to evaluate, do I use Zendesk? Do I use something different? Do I try to roll it in-house? Different things like that. So the first thing you kind of mentioned is it's really important to set up the channels for players to kind of reach out to game developers. Do you have any examples of have you ever done this wrong, or have you found that there is a good set of channels or ways? Should you try to limit how they are? Should you have a whole bunch of them? What lessons have you learned around, this area?
So of course, in the beginning of my career in gaming, I wasn't part of the initial game launch process, because they were already established games. I joined in quite later in the process, so I had to mostly deal with big volumes of support contacts and tickets, and how to manage that kind of volumes with, and managing basically. But I think I can share my experiences from the startups where, we newly launched games. We had to set up those kind of tooling. So, of course, sometimes it's, you can set up those tools. Like, for example, we used HelpShift, and there has been games that we used Zendesk, and they can be, with different purposes. For example, I found that Zendesk is really good when working with bigger volume games where there's a lot of contacts for managing that kind of things. And HelpShift is very, efficient for players as well, because they can already put contact from in-game. It's easier to use, and it's more casual, so it doesn't seem like you're sending a customer support request. It's more like in-game chat that you can quickly send a message. So yeah, I think there has been times where players couldn't find how to contact developers. So then they, there was suddenly someone was getting a phone call asking, how to solve this issue, which was an in-game some technical issue. And then everyone had to figure out how did he find the phone number for someone in the company. So yeah, that kind of situations, I think. And that's when we kind of decided that we should make sure that it's visible where they can contact, where it says help or support notes or these kind of setting in the game settings that are visibly available for players to contact if they need to.
Yeah.
Especially also with purchases.
What are your thoughts about maybe I want to say like pseudo external channels like a Discord or a Facebook group or a forum? Have you ever used any of those? Would you recommend it or recommend getting away from them?
Yes, so we've used them all, I would say, and more recently, more Discord. I think it's a great tool where it's kind of an intimate place where players can communicate well, and there are quite many good features built in for community management. And so we've used that with the previous game that I worked with, for example, quite a lot, and it was quite active day and night, and we had community managers on it, really communicating with players, was also having different channels where they were providing support with for troubleshooting issues, where people could live just send in all kinds of screenshots, whatever the issue is, and also just general campaigns, like community campaigns they were also doing. So I think it's a very useful tool. Of course, Facebook and there's Instagram, all the social media channels are also good, but Discord seems to be for players.
Yeah.
It's something that's more used than Facebook nowadays and Instagram, for example.
Yeah, and there's Reddit
So,
for some folks too. Have you ever found that or have you ever been able to get players to almost do some of the support for you rather than you having to answer every question, or like
yes.
I've got this question and they hop in?
Yes, and that's the greatest example of having a good community and having active players and active fan base. So we've had situations like that where obviously when the game goes live in different countries, there's time zone differences. So when players send a question or they're raising issues about different things that are happening in the game, in Finland, for example, we don't have such a thing that we get back to you at 10 o'clock at night when the work is done. We try to usually be done with it just to have life work balance kind of thing. So, and there has been situations where we didn't get to those issues until morning, but those issues have been already addressed by other players who know it better, because it could be like game features that are need explaining, or how things happened, or they already got a support response to the same issue. So other players who are more active, they already solved it for them and informed everyone how things are working, or what happened, or what is the issue, and what did the developers say already about it. So, and it makes, I think it always made everyone quite happy. It always made me very happy, and I was always very happy to share that with the game developers, saying that, hey, we have this situation going on in Discord, and this is how they responded, and we have this and that player who are very active and very supportive, and this kind of thing. So it's part of building a community building, and having this building a relationship in a way with your player base.
That's great. Okay, so I'm going to move on. You kind of mentioned CRM tools are key. Can you define like what is a CRM in the context of the gaming world? Because CRMs are used all over the place. Like, what maybe like features are most important of in like a CRM, or like which CRMs would you maybe recommend folks take a look at?
Of course, there are many different tools. For example, I will give you the examples of tools that I've worked with, I have experience with. So as I already mentioned, there is Zendesk, there is HelpShift. For a little bit, I worked with Salesforce. And one other tool that I can't remember the name of it, but obviously it wasn't my favorite since I don't remember the name. So in the gaming, in the mobile gaming context, it's the best features are ability for players from the user perspective to be able to send requests as easy as possible, because as you know, mobile games are very easy to use. It's the mobile gaming and free to play, it's short sessions. People play casually in and out all the time during their free time, maybe 5-10 minutes, and then they quit and they come back. So during that process, if something happens, it needs to be that the tools that we are using should be also something that's easy to use and easily, where they can find information about, getting support, getting troubleshooting their issues, purchase issues, whatever it is. So that's what players nowadays expect, that they have well-functioning and easy to use tools. Because when, if you go to a game and you try to send a support ticket and it leads you to an email and then you have to describe everything, it becomes quite troublesome. Sometimes players even, give up in the middle. And sometimes, the valuable information that you might be getting from players or issues are kind of lost. So I think ease of use and efficient way to reach out and find the information that they're trying to solve is the most valuable using these tools. And of course, from the game maker side or the developer side, and for support purposes, it's how easily you can manage all these kind of the player base management, all the support tickets, all the questions, and how you can deflect all the support issues. Because when you have millions of players, for example, you cannot manually solve those issues, sending replies. So there's automation features, there's analytics features, looking at different agents, productivities, how to solve that kind of first response and full response times. And there are many KPIs to look at.
That one big issue, you get like what? Yeah, a huge influx of tickets that everyone, is encountering the same thing. So
and if there's such situations, there are, for example, these tools have features where you can actually collect them all and send auto responses where you get, it's more efficient that way. And for that, there is tagging systems, how to collect all the same issues. So all these features are built in these CRM tools. So of course, when it becomes a volume issue, there's the initial launch of the game where you need to get more maybe manual responses and communication with players in that initial stage of the game, game launch. And then later on, when it's more scaled and there's a bigger volume of players sending in requests, then it's another issue, another stage.
In a lot of like games that I've played, usually when something goes wrong, the game was down when it wasn't planned to be or something like that, oftentimes I'll get like a support message like, we're sorry that you encountered this, like here's a free gift or something. Like, do any of those kind of standard systems that you've kind of used offer something like that?
Yes, we've done that as well. So it depends, of course, what kind of issues. If it's a connection issue, which happens quite often, and if you're reconnecting from Wi-Fi to another network or your phone operator connection and things like that, usually there is a short period of progress that you might lose, and things like that, issues which can be automated and send a response in your game saying that, hey, here's a compensation, or this issue happened with all the other players. If you have the same issue, contact support. So it's basically proactive kind of solutions and approaches to customer support and player support. So it really depends on the issue, but that also needs some digging deeper, which players are affected. It might be only certain platforms, Android players who all got affected, or only iPhone users or iPad users with certain versions. So once those things are known with those issues, it's possible to do that kind of proactive support, contact, deflection solutions. And the same with publishing certain articles, publishing it to all the social media channels that, hey, we had this issue, we had this bug that affected this many players or this certain players.
Yeah.
Please do this kind of troubleshooting.
Yeah, that's great. Okay, well, let's keep moving on because time is quickly going, and it's amazing how much awesomeness in here. Okay, so you talked a little bit about, at least in the beginning, kind of your experiences on the startup side when you're like building the game, just getting it out there, and maybe that like soft launch phase or whatnot. It's really important to be hearing from players and how they're reacting and stuff like that. So it sounds like this is a little bit more than analytics, which might also kind of be important, but what ways have you found that this like reactions kind of works? Like, is it surveys? Is it just like asking people on Discord? Like, what have you found actually works well to get this input and information in?
Yeah, in the beginning stage, I think it's always depends how many players there are in order to to identify what to use. Of course, there are sometimes the game team has already built in certain analytics tracking for certain things, for how long they're active, or certain things that need to be tracked. So that's available already with certain analytics data. But then there are certain features that we really need to hear from the player experience. How did they like certain features, or the art, or certain activity in the game? And that's always, I found it personally with the game teams that I worked with, is to have active communication with Discord. If there's a in-game chats, I've urged the teams to build in certain kind of this dev announcement in-game chat features, where you could ask them to send in their feedback or even discuss it in the in-game chats, so we could follow up what they're actually discussing and how did they like certain things, or what they're actually saying about the feature and different attacks if it's a battle game and things like that. And in Discord, it was quite often, since it was mostly widely used, have a separate channel where we could ask this kind of feedback and suggestions channel. And the most active players who really like the game, they're often the most vocal ones, and they get ideas and they share it. So it was good to have that kind of feedback loop, also bringing it to the game team, and to designers and the art team, what they're saying. Since in the beginning stage, there's not that many players, it's manageable, it's very doable, and it's actually nicer that way to really build out to bigger kind of player base. Because as we already talked, those players who feel connected and have direct communication with development team, they become the kind of the promoters of the game as well, who also become the supporters of the game, and who are helping even the
organic growth. Get all your friends to come join it. Yeah, that's
exactly. So it's I think it's that initial part is very important to try to build this kind of a smaller community and grow that from that point on. And but then of course when it's bigger player volumes and bigger users, then it's a different thing. It's about sending out surveys. We've had specific surveys that are sent out to players, and sometimes it works, sometimes it didn't work, because players don't like being disrupted, interrupted during their gameplay, to answer a survey and answer very detailed questions. So in those cases, we also try to give some, in-game currency or something nice compensations where they are rewarded for their time and work. So it's about, I think, testing and seeing how your player base reacts.
If anyone is interested in like surveys, I recommend like researching Jagex and listening to some of their talks and things like that, because they've done it for the longest time. And in some cases, they'll have like 97% of their players like finishing like 2-hour-long surveys or something that aren't reward. Like, it blows my mind how they've done it, but very fascinating stuff. But
yeah, I think it really depends also, on how invested players are. There are players who love the game so much that they are willing to, answer all the questions. They want to, do everything asked, and they will take their time to really answer all the questions. But then some that are not. So in the beginning stage, of course, when you want a bigger kind of volume of players to respond, there are many different things. And one other thing we've done is that not to have this disrupted like pop-ups in the game, but try to send it out like via the in-game chats, as a separate kind of channel where you could answer surveys or answer some questions. So yeah, I think it depends on the game.
I love it. Okay. Next, we've got server backend tools. What sort of things do these need to have so that you can actually like interact with players and do troubleshooting and stuff, which you mentioned is pretty key.
So yeah, backend tools have been, quite important. So, and over years, I've used many different tools. Some are really, really great, and some not so. So it led to me for me to be a great learning experience on what kind of features are useful and what kind of features are lacking and what could be done. So with this latest tools project that I have done, I really enjoyed actually building those features completely custom, based on my experience, based on things that I've used in the past, and we built it in-house. So the most the useful ones, and I think it's always a kind of a pain point for a lot of games, is to have the lost game progress and lost game kind of that what is it, retraction kind of process. So, and then compensations, I would say those are two big things. Whenever the players are losing progress or their game account or any in-game currency, it always becomes a big deal. And when you need to investigate and find out what happened, you really need the tools where you can actually look up from the backend what has happened and to really continue that relationship building with the players, to explain what the hell happened, how to solve it. and how to communicate it, and having the great tools really helps in that process of serving your players, serving your player community.
Yeah, no, that's great. Okay. All right, you have moderation tools for in-game chat. I think pretty much everyone knows what that is, filtering out all the profanities and really angry people and stuff like that. If you don't know what it is, go play a couple games of League of Legends. You'll learn fast. So then you had kind of live operation tools for development. Like, what are these, and like, what's required in a live ops tool?
Yeah, so LiveOps tool was something, for example, we added on top of, having the support kind of backend tools, as we realized that it's something that could be, all in one place. Having the player kind of information to ease of service for agents, as well as for our product managers or other team, or in the game teams who are running the live ops, for our producers and so on. The most useful thing that we found was, especially for multiplayer games, to have the real-time deployments. When you deploy certain live campaigns, that they are real time. So that was something that my team and also the game teams that we worked with and the backend developers worked quite hard on, to really build the server architecture in a way that it is all real time, when especially different game versions and different kind of maps and different levels are involved, that what we are deploying and campaigns that we're deploying for different player segments that are done very efficiently.
You maybe give an example, like you said, live campaigns, for somebody that maybe doesn't really know what that is. Like, could you maybe give an example of like what's contained in a live campaign, or like what that really means?
Yeah, so it's basically a live campaign can be different updates. So it's quite, I think, popular nowadays, or for a long time now already, that there's gonna be soon a lot of Christmas and holiday campaigns, holiday updates coming in with different, custom, more for holiday season updates. So those are live because it's only for a certain period of time, with certain content, and it's going to be removed after a while. So and some of them actually stay. Some content stays, for example, in-game decorations or things like that. So yeah, those are considered live campaigns, which is done. Of course, they're planned in advance, but they need to be done very quickly and taken out in a timely manner, and you get to serve service players and analyze the data very quickly, since it's a very short time kind of campaigns most of the time, these live campaigns. And you really have to have that feedback loop as well, if since you have to make sure that everything is working correctly, there are no issues. If there are issues, they are solved very quickly when they're deployed, because considering the time frame, it's very live.
So it kind of sounds to me like this is kind of like almost like a control layer for your remote config, and that config can go down just over the air, no client updates, and change the stuff so that as soon as the pumpkins config version comes down, we start to see the Halloween pumpkins everywhere, and then when you get the Christmassy one, snow appears everywhere, kind of a thing.
Yeah, sometimes it is just some client work, and it really depends on the campaigns. Yes.
Yeah. To do this kind of thing, like what else would I need beyond just like the Google remote config in Firebase, or the Unity remote config? Like, what other things would I need to be able to achieve something like this?
I don't have any experience working with Firebase or Unity configs. I'm sure probably other games do that, or game teams. But yeah, as you said, Google Sheets or sometimes even Excel sheets are the configs that are, I think, still widely used. Yeah, in addition, for example, the reason I built the backend server tool was that I don't have to deal with that kind of details, where it is already connected to that, configs, everything that I can get in my user-friendly tool that we were building, or the PMs or whoever is deploying, or the producers for deploying it, they can easily get in a drop-down menu which one to use.
Yep.
So that's how we've done it. And then all the solutions, how they need to be stored, where they need to be stored in the AWS, or if the config is in Excel or Google Sheet, and who has responsibility to really change those configs. That is, a detail that a user, a producer, or a PM, for example, the idea was they don't have to worry about it.
Okay.
So, I think yes, of course.
I'm gonna try for 2 more questions, and then I think we're almost out of time. So let's move to analytics tools real quick. Just give me like a high level, like what are some essential things that you would look for in an analytics tool?
Of course, I think it depends. What are we talking about in analytics? Is it player support based? Is it for the whole game? There are different parts to analytics data, but for the purposes that I used, for example, in support, in community, I always was curious about the ticket numbers and which issues are related to this bigger volume of issues that we're receiving, and then matching it up with the active user kind of the analytics numbers, and really help to identify what are the issues that are happening, what can we do about it in the future to really proactively solve solutions and serve players, and maybe build in certain features even that would identify or address those issues. So, and analytics team usually has been very helpful in that, really building in that kind of tracking systems already from the feature building point on. So because the main point of analytics in my view is that to make sure to how you can do the game making or the features, or servicing your players even better, and how to address some issues and proactively address them in the future and grow your game.
Yeah, that's great. Okay. One last question. You talked a little bit about segmentation. You've also talked about player experience.
Yes.
What experiences have you had towards, like, if I want to make a segment, like how have you found that it works well, or maybe it doesn't work well? Like what recommendations would you have for people that are trying to get more into segmenting?
Yeah, so again, it comes down to when you have bigger volumes of contacts from your players, or larger active user base, larger player base, then it becomes the issues of choosing your battles, when you are trying to service your players, communicate with your players. Who do you provide the best service to, and how to really make it efficient, and how to really continue that building the community and the relationship with your players. So then, the segmentation is a really good way to do it. And I think different teams look at different segments, and work with their own ways. But for example, active players and churn players, or paying players and non-paying players, and the paying players, they have their own segments, and then providing kind of service and communication and compensation based on those segments is always the best way to go, of course, when we're talking about a bigger player base. And it's not always that non-paying players are not a priority. Sometimes, depending on the game, where you need, for example, if it's a multiplayer game, or if you need, it's a battle matching game, you need active players who are non-paying. So if they are very active and they're playing a lot, but they're non-paying, they are still high priority. So really understanding the segments and what do you need it for in the kind of analyzing your game and the purpose, I think, is very important. And trying to really address and still keep communicating with those players is really important. So yes, I hope that answered a little bit to your question.
Yeah, that's great. Okay, so pretty much out of time. So I'm going to ask you one last unofficial question, because we are the Mastering Retention podcast, of course, and that is, what's one tip or trick or lesson you've learned over the years that, how do you keep your players playing for longer, coming back day after day and hopefully year after year?
Okay, yeah, that's a really nice question. Let me think. I think what really helped me at some point in my career to really realize the meaning, how I work, and the way I work was in customer experience and in mobile games, is to really realize the impact you're giving, because players are also people just like you who really love it and who really enjoy it. Sometimes they find mobile games and that game playing process as an escape sometimes from the reality, really somewhere more magical or more creative, more fun place to really forget the world troubles or their own troubles. And we've had a lot of these kind of customer support messages where they really sent their thank yous or feedback and the reasons why they play, which really was inspiring for me to, for my job, to how much actually impact games have for players and for people in general. So I would say that really think of players and game making process from that perspective, that they have a reason for playing, and to make that process as nice as possible, not just as a money making machine, but really care and support, and try to do the best by building the right tools, the right processes, where people and players don't feel like they are just neglected or not, their issues are not addressed, but having that more caring and approach to building communities and taking care of players. And I think in that process, players want to come back because they feel cared and they have good memories playing these games, even if they don't end up playing in the future. But it's always a big part of their life. I think people always end up thinking about the games they've once played.
Spot on. I love it. Well, thank you so much, Bakyt. If people do have follow-up questions or anything for you, is there a good way for them to get in contact with you?
Yes, absolutely. I would love it if people have questions, and happy to answer them. My LinkedIn page is a great place to reach out to me. I'm quite active there, even though I'm not posting so many things very often, but I do like to see the professional and the gaming community and all the other professional communities to really interact and share their experiences and learnings. So yes, I'm hoping to be sharing more making more posts, but that will be coming soon. And I will be having a website launching soon, so that will be, that is being updated.
You better start following her on LinkedIn and get ready for this website. This is exciting stuff.
Yes, yes. So yes, and then you can, I think, visit my website and learn more. But LinkedIn is a good place. So please visit, contact me, or follow me, send me a request to connect.
We'll love it. Thank you so much. And thank you for all you're doing for the gaming community. It's amazing.
Hey, thank you so much. It was a pleasure to talk to you about all the tooling and players and CRMs and game making.
Awesome. All right. Cheers.